Okay, I'll try to be non-enthusiastic, which fits the title of the thing. There's a box here that I have to stay in, so I'll just be careful a bit. So as you've probably already understood, is that here? Oh, no, let's wait with this. Do I have answers for you? Can I tell you what your Azure migration will cost? I don't think so. I'm not sure if you're going to leave with the answers. Maybe 42. 42 will be the answer. That will be the cost. I've done a few Azure migrations now, especially when data is involved. Like everybody can say, okay, we have 3 VMs. What will the cost be in Azure? Okay, we get that. But now there's databases involved and reporting services, and can they go to VMs, or do they need to go to a PaaS or IaaS, or what do we do? Do we put Active Directory in there, and if we back up to blobs, what is the cost of a blob? And there's like 5 different kinds of disks. Do you need fast ones or slow ones? And there's disks that are, if you switch off the server, it's just storage cost, and there's disks that you pay fully and you can use them. Confusing, right? I'm probably going to make it even more confusing because I ran into a lot of, well, things. So you've seen this, right? Without sponsors, events like this, not possible at all. So please give them some attention. I'm an organizer of an event myself. I don't know if you've heard of SQL Saturdays. This is a free Saturday, usually like this. Was this free? Okay. I'm one of these speaker divas. I have no idea. It's all free for me. I don't know. So no, I organize a SQL Saturday. If you're interested, in Holland, September 30th in Utrecht, in the middle of the country. We have 460 people signed up already. 6 tracks, 6 even. And everything will be in English. It's all SQL Server Azure, but everything basically Microsoft Data Platform related. If you're interested, just go to sqlsaturday.com, find Holland, sign up. Germany has one as well in Rhineland. There's SQL Grillen here in this place in June 26, 22. Also excellent. I'll try to lower this a bit. Is this better? Yeah. I'm not shouting that much in there. I can be a bit louder. Okay, so since I'm an organizer myself, I know buying coffee for 200 of your best friends is not free at all. So give them some love. So you've probably heard already, I'm Dutch. The accent, you've probably, well, 2 Dutch people over here already, Belgian guy. They were the only ones in the room when I was setting up, so I thought, maybe I could do this thing in Dutch, but nope. Yeah, I will not try to do this in German. If you have questions and you cannot find the English words, I can understand German just fine, no problem at all. Ich habe Deutsch gelernt von der Sendung mit der Maus. When you grow up in Holland and on the east side, and when you're my age, like in mid-40s, you have no cable TV. It's all done with an antenna on your house, and you have Holland 1, Holland 2, and like 5 German channels. Right? So I grew up watching Star Trek, the A-Team, Magnum, all in German. Ich liebe es, wenn ein Plan funktioniert. Right? I'm a SQL Server MVP, or Data Platform MVP, as they are called these days. What else? I've never been inside a coffee shop, so if you have questions about that, I cannot help you. We have a smoking ban in public places, like you have here. And if you have a coffee shop to run, that's a bit awkward. So we have an extra amendment to our law that says you're allowed to smoke cannabis in a coffee shop, but not normal cigarettes. That would be illegal. That's the only thing I know about it. Never been inside one. So let's get started. I borrowed this from, this is actually a marketing thing. This is about marketing and not about cloud technologies at all, but this describes it quite well. You're all buying data centers and racks and thinking about another data center because you have disaster recovery, especially if SQL servers or any other database technology is involved, if your data is gone, it's a disaster, right? And how much data is gone and how long it's gone and what your business is the level of the disaster that you have, right? I don't know if you've heard of RTO and RPO, recovery time objective and recovery point objective. Have you all set this for your data? Do you know what it is and what it should be? Right? If I ask you, what is your RTO of your database? You no idea? Most companies do. Oh, well, so RTO, recovery time objective, if my database goes down, how long can it be down, right? When does the boss start, well, we're losing millions, where is this database? And recovery point objective, when you're back up, when it's running again, what did you miss? What did you lose? How much data can you lose? And a lot of companies say, well, I think we can be down for a couple of hours. And data loss, the backup of yesterday will be fine. Yeah, until it happens. The best example I have is a slaughterhouse that I work for in the Netherlands, one of the companies we work for. They have cows go in the front and meat comes out the back, packaged and everything. Their revenue is about €1 billion a year. Yeah, this is serious business. If their system goes down, they're not allowed to process any food, any meat at all, because in the supermarket, if they find something wrong with the meat, they have to trace it back to the factory and to the farmer and to the family of the cow and everything. That they have to know everything. So if that database goes down, production stops. They figured it out. Their RTO is a bit funny. If the database goes down, they cannot process anything. So the trucks line up in the parking lot, then in the road to the street, then onto the street, and then the building is long, and there's a little thing that sticks out. And after about an hour, the trucks are visible from the thing that sticks out, which is the office of the boss of the company. So after 1 hour, he can see trucks and starts calling, what is going on? So it's a bit funny, but at least they thought about it. Their RTO is an hour. So the RPO is way more serious. They figured this out because their database broke. And they had to go in, scramble, put these white jackets on, wash your boots, go into the factory, and write everything down and weigh and measure and look at cargo bills and everything, try to figure out what is what. They figured out 5 minutes data loss, they could still salvage whatever was in the factory. That was okay, and they could keep producing it. They lost 15 minutes of data because they had transaction log dumps, and they did it every 15 minutes, and they lost one. And they couldn't figure it out. They made too many mistakes, and the health inspector said nope, and they had to clean out the whole factory, throw away all the meat in the whole factory. The cows that were still alive were lucky, back on the truck, and the rest destroyed. Besides all the money, think about all the animals that died for nothing, right? This is a serious thing. So that's how most companies find out after a disaster, unfortunately. So they spend lots of money, I don't know if you've ever calculated this. The IT sounds so simple. I need a Hyper-V, or I need this, or I need that for my back office, until you have something critical. And usually databases can be quite critical. I don't mean the SharePoint thing. It can be critical. It has the pictures of all the barbecues that you had and everything in it. So you don't want to lose it. But no, this can be critical. And you spend so much money on it. And then comes the question, and I have customers like that. They go, okay, André, the systems, the hardware is now 6 years old, and I don't want to buy new hardware. I just want to go into the cloud. How do we do that? How much cloud do I need? And what is it going to cost? And the first time, and I think the second and the third time as well, I went, should we just try this out? I have no idea. Turns out there are a few things that you can do to figure out what you do. There's a simple one. You've probably already seen this, right? You can just go, wow, This would be a very boring session if I would just show you this. Here's the URL, and you can calculate what the cost is. No, okay. There's a cost calculator in there. I think I have it here even. Let me show you. Oh, I should not click. Done. No, it's okay. Extend. Come back. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, here we go. No, I meant duplicate actually. Duplicate. Gone. This is when you put PowerPoint in. It goes into this mode. Here we go. I think I have it here. Here we go. Pricing calculator. You basically tell Azure how many virtual machines you need and how much storage you want and how many databases, and you can make a list. Probably you've seen this if you have a provider that wants to help you with going to the cloud. Their cost estimation will be something like this. They'll come up with this, an export of this thing. The projector is not doing me a favor, I see, but yeah, resolution is too high of this thing. Okay, let me fix that quickly. Bye. Oh, did I already install that? No. Zoom it. Zoom it, run. Go back. See if this works better. Better, right? So these companies come up with something that exports from here. So you can do a bit of a calculation, and it's easy if you have virtual machines or not. But when it comes to data and databases, what do you do then? And when you have quite a complex environment, what if you have racks and racks of servers? What would that cost if you go to the cloud? So there are actually a few things that you can do, and we'll get to that later. Shift, did I do shift? Does it switch again? Okay, I should switch that off. Now, first of all, there's a bunch of options that you can use to buy Azure. Like there's the classic pay-as-you-go. This is where we all start, I think. Grab your credit card, get an account, and start working on it. But if you're a big company, this is going to get annoying, right? The boss of the IT has to have a corporate credit card or something. This doesn't feel corporate-y at all. So there's other options. These days you can use a cloud solution provider. They will get the bill from Azure and they will bill you, and they will make a margin on that. So you're basically buying a service. Job done. There's some licensing program. Enterprise agreement has Azure in it as well. You have a hybrid use benefit these days. This is where the calculation gets interesting. If you already have Windows licenses, you can reuse them in Azure, but you have to tell Microsoft that you're planning to do this. Because if you start a VM that has Windows on it, you're paying for the license of Windows as well. And if you already have one and you're not going to use it anymore on premises, you could use it and transfer it to the cloud. Same goes for SQL Server. If you start a SQL Server Enterprise Edition, these things are expensive, right? This is why the VMs are more expensive. The license is in there. The best way to try out, if you're testing things, if things would work in the cloud, the cheapest way, in my opinion, is an MSDN license. MSDN gives you it gives you $150, I think, $130 per month. It's not about that. It gives you $130 a month or 100 euros or something to work with. 110. That will change tomorrow, right? It'll be 130 euros. Or the thing is, you get a discount on the machines. You're not paying for the Windows license. You're not paying for the SQL Server license because it's for testing. So your VMs that you start are 40% cheaper. And there's no SQL Server edition on prices on top of that. So this 100 euros gets you a lot further. And you can attach a credit card to that and be way cheaper in testing things. So if you're testing things out and you want to get the cheapest possible option, besides getting everything for free from Microsoft, like this Diva here, get an MSDN license, right? Since we're in Germany, Azure Germany, there was this whole thing about all our data shall remain in Germany. Like, I think next year the GDPR, what is it, General Data Protection? Yeah. the European-wide data protection law that says, hey, if you're in Europe, your data can leave your country, but has to stay in Europe. So basically, you can, if you're in England, you're thinking, oh shit, we need data centers now, which they are probably going to build, right? Yeah. So, but the main ones, Amsterdam and Dublin, those are fine, right? If you're ever playing with Azure, if you haven't seen this yet, there is West Europe, and then there's North Europe. You'd think Amsterdam would be North Europe and Dublin West Europe. It's not. It's the other way around. If you look at the map, like Dublin is slightly more north than Amsterdam, and so that's North Europe for some reason. Azure Germany, I hear stories that people say, yeah, our data shall remain in Germany, and we have to use the German data center. That's fine. That will be 40% extra, please. Oh, maybe not all our data needs to stay in Germany, right? I think by the time this thing was ready, nobody started using it or something. There must be companies in there, I'm sure. It's also not connected to Azure. So you cannot do a failover to Amsterdam or something. So you do not have a full Azure thing, right? And then there's the MSDN one that I already told about. Now it sounds so easy. It sounds so easy. Like, oh, Azure pricing, if you click on the link, it will just say, pay for what you use, right? So if I switch something on, I pay for an hour. If I switch it off after an hour. Why is this talk then, right? Or per minute even. Because that's not completely true, and we'll get to that. And then there's always this calculation, because if you're looking at the cost in Azure, you see the pure cost of a VM that you're switching on, and you think, that's expensive, right? It feels expensive, doesn't it? If you click around, it just feels like, oh, that's not cheap at all. Like $3 something per hour sounds cheap, and then you have to do it by times 720, which is a month. And you go, ooh, that's actually quite a lot. But have you calculated this for yourself? Do you guys know what your hardware cost is? Your software, electricity? Electricity is not cheap. Your data center cost, the building itself. Do you know what the costs are? Do you have this inside? You know this? Oh, excellent. There's not many. Okay. There's not many. I worked for quite a large bank in the Netherlands. And they had not a good idea of what that data center cost was. They built a new one, and they figured out that it was quite expensive when they figured out that they had to move 1.3 billion euros in equipment. And they had to move it by letting the two SANs didn't want to talk to each other, so the SAN from the one had to go to London, talk to the old SAN over there, and talk to another old SAN over there, and then synchronize with the other SAN in the Netherlands, so go via England. And then when they caught up, switched the servers off, moved them in a truck, hope the stuff didn't break, right? What breaks? Your hard disks, of course. They're all dead when they arrive, or enough, right? Like hopefully only one out of a RAID 5 set will break. They never do. I keep running into it. It has nothing to do with this. If you have, I've seen it like 10 times this year already in 2 major SAN catastrophes. If you have SANs that are built on 3-disk RAID 5 sets, stop doing that. They're like smoke detectors in your house. If the smoke detector in your house beeps because the battery is dead, what do? It's not a trick question. What do? You take the battery out, right? Next day you buy how many batteries? Just one for this thing? All of them, right? You replace all of them because you've put new batteries in. Because if you don't replace all of them, the next night the other one will start beeping, and then the other one. So you replace all of them. What happens with RAID 5 disks? One breaks. There's a spare disk in your SAN. There's 2 settings that you can do in a SAN for rebuilding a RAID 5. Take your time and as fast as possible. What do you think a SAN admin is going to set on this thing? Right? As fast as possible. When does an old disk break? When you start using it as fast as possible to recalculate the things for the other RAID 5. Boom, 2 disks dead in a RAID 5. And the really cool SANs these days have stripe sets across all of the disks. and then they mirror across those things, and then there's Hyper-V hosts on them, and before you know it, they're all down, all of them. I've seen this like a complete data center down because 2 disks in one little 3-disk RAID 5 set went down twice already this year. Oh yeah, I cannot tell who that was for. No. This is being recorded, right? This was luckily for something that wasn't in production yet, and it was for a Dutch governmental agency. And I'm not allowed to say who it is, but I can give a description. I'm allowed to do that. Here we go. It is for the Dutch agency that if you make money, they want half of it. I will say nothing else. So, let me first go, take a step back before we go into actual calculations. And I have only 45 minutes, right? Let's keep an eye on that. So I've got 20 minutes left. I'm a fast talker, it's okay. First of all, people think that an Azure data center looks like this. I think there is actually one that looks like this, but I've been inside one, and it doesn't look like this. There are no containers, shipping containers in the Azure data center in Dublin. This is what the one I'm talking about. Because they said the containers would contain all kinds of computers, and when too many of them break, they will just replace it with a new container and hook it up and be done with it, right? That didn't scale. So they do this now on whole data centers. It looks like this. It's a big structure with 5 buildings inside the structure. So this is a data center, and this is a data center, and this is one. And they're all disconnected from each other. And if you walk around inside them, in the first one, you can see all the classic stuff that a data center for a big bank would have as well. Anti-static paint on the floor, all the major vendors, right? There's everything. It looks like a normal data center. Three or more data centers down the road, completely different. They've learned from stuff. This is... I worked for a bank that built a new data center 20 years after they built the old one. Looks exactly the same. All the same okay, the technology has renewed and whatnot, and some things are different, but mostly it's the same. These things, by the time they get here, they're thinking about tearing this one down, throw everything away, and rebuild it like this one, plus what they've learned from this one. This is why I think classic data centers can never be as effective. I won't say cheap, but as effective as what Azure is doing right now, Microsoft, probably Amazon as well. It's a race with these guys, right? How effective they can turn electricity into compute power. That's basically it. They even have an acronym for that, but I forgot about it. But it's the ratio of electricity to compute power. And they're fanatical about that. They have, in Dublin, there is no air conditioning at all, nothing. They use something called swamp cooling. In Louisiana, if you're in the swamp, you want to cool down, but you don't have electricity, you put a wet towel in front of the window, and the wind that blows through it cools it down just a little bit, just enough. And they do that here. Big cardboard boxes like this, or big metal boxes with cardboard in it, with a big fan behind it, and they spray water mist on it. And that comes from straight outside. The guys that gave the tour said if the farmers outside the data center mow the grass, it smells like grass in the whole data center. And I would think you're spraying water on something and then blow it into a bunch of computers. They said, yeah, we tested out having a rack of computers on the parking lot with a protection against the rain, but just no protection against the weather. And they said in the old days, computers have to be 17 or 18 degrees, right? Cool it immensely, the computer rooms. Then they went, well, it can be warmer as long as the fluctuations are not that big. So we put the temperature up and saved a lot of money. They were saying even the fluctuations are fine. Okay, they've tested it. The computers can handle it. So this is where data centers like Azure can be... will always, in the end, they will always beat what normal data centers do. Besides all the plumbing that Microsoft does to make it easy for people to develop stuff, right? I'm not even talking about the whole architecture of your solutions. Right? If you made an architecture today, and you have your data in Azure, maybe next week something comes up, a new architecture that, okay, I have all my data already there, and now suddenly I can use this architecture as well. We're not even talking about that. This is purely the building cost and whatnot. Now, a few things about cost that could surprise you. They keep warning you about Ingress and Egress, and it's fancy words for just putting data in a data center from Microsoft and taking data out. It probably won't surprise you if I say, if you put data into Azure, it's free. And if you take data out of Azure, you need to pay, right? This also means from one data center to the other. So if you have something that goes from Dublin to Amsterdam and back and forth, that's taking it out of data centers. You pay for that. So if you put, by accident, your Power BI portal in Dublin and your data in Amsterdam, you're paying for this thing. Be careful there. It's not even that expensive. There's not a surprising there. Now, there is another one here. Virtual machines. It sounded so easy, right? You pay for what you switch on and you pay per hour or per minute. And if you switch it off, you don't pay anymore. Okay, fine. How big are these machines, right? Can I set the CPU and the disk and the memory all separate from each other? Nope. They have made blocks, right? You have to pick the VM that fits your needs. So if you want 2 cores, 8 gigs of memory, and 10 terabytes of data or something, there's a block for that. You switch on that one. And if you want a bigger machine, if you want more memory, then probably you also have to buy more cores. They're attached to each other. So that could be expensive. That's why they made various kinds of machines. Like if you are memory hungry, I need machines with more memory, you go to the memory optimized machines. If you go through the list of VMs in Azure, it gets longer and longer and longer and longer, and it's hard to find which ones you need. Just figure out for yourself, do I need lots of CPU and not much memory, or the other way around? And find, or maybe something that can do lots of I/O, like big 10 gig Ethernet cards or something. Do I process big files? So where it gets cheaper is if you know what you need, your own storage needs or your own I/O or CPU needs, and grow this thing accordingly. Blob. Storage, the cheapest thing in Azure, I think. The storage is very cheap, and they keep coming up with even cheaper stuff. There's cold storage and whatnot. There's one thing that you should not forget in the bottom. There's also something called access prices. So if you touch your storage or take something out of your storage, you're also paying for the transport cost. And this says it's about a 0.0031 cents per 100,000 transactions. I did something with backups of terabytes of data to this thing, and it turned out about 10, 20 euros per terabyte of backup that I wanted to store or something. The transaction is 4 KB, so you can calculate what the cost would be if you touch your storage. But again, you need to know how much data you have, how many backups are you making, how often are you touching these things, etc. Right? So you need to look at the architecture of the stuff that you use. Same goes for disks. This is where it gets complicated. There's managed and unmanaged, and there's standard and premium, and this changes a lot. This changes very often, and the disks get bigger and bigger if you want them bigger and bigger. I have a very simple thing here. There are disks that if you do not use the storage, you pay for what you use, right? You pay only for the storage that you use. This is usually the standard stuff, and the non-managed probably. And there are disks that are SSD-based. Every time it says SSD, probably. You're talking about premium managed disks, especially if you're running databases inside of VMs. They need those things because they can handle about 5,000 IOPS per disk, and you can stack multiple disks in the storage thing, so you can mimic a bit faster storage. Those you pay per month, 120 euros per terabyte. If you switch off the VM, you're still paying for that disk. So if you put 6 disks in a VM, that's 700 euros. And if you switch off the VM, still 700 euros in storage. That's not going to go away. And I've tried doing the thing Okay, then if I'm not using it, I'll switch it to non-standard disk or something. No, forget about that. That's not going to work. You're going to have to move data around, and you spend more time moving stuff around than is actually working. Same with Azure SQL databases. There's the cheap ones and the really expensive ones, and I thought, I need a really expensive one, but not all the time. So I wanted to switch between a P10 and like an S2 or something. Anytime you cross this boundary between P and S, it takes ages to move them down. Takes ages to move them up. Sometimes doesn't even work. You have to wait and try it again. And this is not something you do in 5 minutes. Where Microsoft says, yeah, if your load increases, you can just make it higher, make it scale. Well, web servers, yeah, you just add a VM, new web server, making a database go faster. Be careful there. The switching is not always, especially if you have a lot of data. So what happens? Say you have a terabyte database, and you're on a P5, just one of these things, and you go to a P10, and there's no more space on the same host, so you have to go to a different host. So Azure spins up a VM that is the size of a P10, and then your database needs to go into it. So they start an availability group, always on availability group to that new one. And you have to wait until the whole terabyte of data has moved, and then you're there. So the bigger your data, the longer this takes. The switching is not that easy. So when you're migrating to it, what size do you pick? Well, a bit higher than you think you need, and then maybe optimize your system and move it down. Question?
Do you talk about VMs with SQL?
No, I'm talking about Azure SQL databases, which also run on a VM. There's no magic inside an Azure data center. Like, really?
They have the elastic pools. They say they have also you can turn them up and down.
Yeah, you can switch everything up and down, but be careful there. It doesn't go as fast as you think for databases, right? So there's a company in Holland actually called Snelstart, the accounting software. They have 25,000 Azure SQL databases. Like 2% of all the databases in Azure are from Texel, that little island on top of Holland. And the guy said, they don't have a DBA, nothing. So talk about saving cost. The guy said, if one of my developers makes a mistake and the thing gets overloaded, so they need to switch it to a higher level, he says the cost is like 5,000 or 10,000 euros for a week. So they make it a race to fix the mistake and put the thing down again and done. So every mistake is about a 5,000 to 10,000 euro mistake. Still cheaper than a DBA. That's on the payroll if you don't make a lot of mistakes, right? So these SQL databases. Let's go past the calculator. Oh yeah. No, I'll show you something. DTUs, right? I've got 10 more minutes. Good. There is DTUs. Here we go. And they're magic. Let's zoom a bit. The DTUs are magic. Microsoft does not tell you what a DTU is, database transaction unit. How do I know how many DTUs my database uses in production on premises? There is no counter for that. There's nothing in that SQL server that will tell you how many DTUs it is. But there are two ways you can measure this. There is a website that is in Azure, but it's not from Microsoft. And somebody made that with a calculation. What you can actually do is create a little perfmon counter, and it's documented what you need. It's just 3 counters or something. And you take the perfmon CSV, upload it to that site, and it comes with a graph, and it tells you, oh, you've been using so many P something and so many S2 in this time. So on average, you're using like a P2, but you have spikes that go into a P3. So if you maybe fix those queries, you could stay in a P2 or have a P3 or start with a P4 and then fix those. But there's a website that does this for you. There's also this guy. He actually has done a complete research of what it is. He's done workloads on a SQL server and then just measured how many, and then uploaded it to that site and then tried to see what came out of it. And he's figured out eventually what the whole calculation means. So he's got various graphs in this thing that will tell you what you need. But the best way is just to use this Azure DTU, it's called DTU calculator. And you just feed it your perfmon CSV and it will come back with an answer. It's pretty accurate. The official response from somebody from Microsoft who knows how the DTUs are calculated was, yeah, that's not official, but he's pretty close. Well, he actually means he's spot on, but he couldn't say that. So that's the best way to figure out what your database is used. A disadvantage from that thing, it can take only a couple of hours of data. So if you have like a week-long process and not a day is the same with some process on a Saturday that's completely different, you want to feed it a week of data, you'll be uploading a bunch of CSVs and then stitch them all together. Unfortunately, a whole day wouldn't work, but I've half days. That worked. I've chopped them up in half days. So you'll be playing with these perfmon counters tool, like relog. Relog will cut your perfmon counters. It's a command line tool. It will cut your perfmon counters in pieces, and you can upload those. And then you have to do some magic with the graphs. See where you go. Now another one.
Thinking that SQL Kamman, I saw Jeroen, I think, from also Dutch guy, they made that reporting for SQL also on the old, that they did it there.
Yeah, there are also a bunch of third-party tools that they charge you a lot, and then they tell you what you need. New version. There's another thing that you can use, and this is more for your entire organization. Have you guys heard of the? Here it comes. Come on, load. There we go. The map toolkit, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit, free thing from Microsoft. And it does a lot of things. It does way more than just calculate Azure stuff. But you can run this in your organization. It will find all your servers, and if you ask somebody that has enough rights to run it for you, it will do a complete inventory of what you have running, and you can use it to do see if you can scale something, or see if you can consolidate your Hyper-V service. There's reports in that will arrange this for you. But what it also does, if you take that database, there's a website, it's Microsoft. This one is Microsoft. The Azure TCO calculator. There's been a whole research, these guys, Nucleus Research, they've made a whole system with all the costs of your whole data center. They've calculated what a data center costs, like the man hours, the electricity, power. They've given you an average on what a data center would cost. And what you can do with this tool is type in what you have. So you do start now, and you start. I can do that actually. Start now, and you start entering what you have in your data center, all your servers, all your stuff, and it will give you a cost based on what the research said. That this is what this normally, on average, costs around the world based on our research, right? That sounds like a lot of work if you have a lot of servers. Now, what you can do with that map toolkit is upload that into this tool. That's the cool part. So you let the map toolkit scan your system. Let's see, bulk input, upload file, here you go. You can just click on bulk input, go upload file from the map toolkit. Oh, I'm not supposed to stand here. The camera thing. And you just upload the file and it will do the whole calculation for you. So instead of you putting all your stuff in there, whether this gives you a really accurate pricing calculation of what your data set, this is for your data center cost. This will not tell you what your Azure cost will be. This will give you, based on the Nucleus research, a cost for your data center of all the parts. So it will tell you what your costs are, so it makes it easier to compare. That's the whole idea about it. Oh, 4 minutes. I can do this. So, switch back. Come on. We've seen the calculator. We've seen this cost thing. And this is a slide you've probably seen before, but if you go one-on-one and you have your cost under control in your data center and you have trained staff for what you do, and then suddenly you move into Azure and the staff needs to be needs to do something else or something, I'm not sure if that's really cost effective. But if you it will help you more if you have loads that are really suitable for Azure. If you have nightly batches that you can switch off the machine and only run it at night, right? ETL processes for databases, loading a data warehouse, typical example. You have a lot of these ETL packages from SSIS and SQL Server. I don't know if that means anything to you. But you have a SQL Server somewhere and you load a data warehouse at night. I have situations where we switch on a virtual machine that automatically loads all the ETL processes, and when it's done, it switches itself off. So you can run a beefy machine even, but the cost is really low because you run it for 2 hours a day. And you get into discussions with the admins of the company. Okay, give me the specs of the machine and I will create it for you. No, here's a script that will create the machine. Oh, okay. How do I attach it to my Active Directory? You don't. Yeah, but how do I patch it? You don't need to. Yeah, but how do I administer it? How do I RDP it into it to see if something goes wrong? If something goes wrong, we'll throw it away, we'll make a new one. And they're like, what? So this is a discussion that you're going to have, and I've lost it once, where I now have this virtual machine that only switches on once per day to do the ETL, but it's in an Active Directory and it gets patched by somebody who logs into it and patches it and everything. So we switch it on for 2 hours every night to do the ETL, and 1 hour a week by the admin who admins the thing. Sometimes you have processes in a company that you just can't get around. Surprises that I've run into where your plan is to go to Azure SQL databases, use the PaaS stuff, the completely managed stuff from Microsoft, and there's just 1 or 2 applications that just won't go. Oh man, damn, we need a VM. Okay, fine, we'll have 1 VM. There's never 1 VM. Because now you have 1 VM, but it needs to be in an AD, and you have to, okay, fine, we'll also extend our Active Directory. Oh, no, now we need 2-factor authentication and a VPN, and before you know it, you have a complete network in Azure. So if the idea is to have PaaS only, be careful, because I've not seen that work completely all the time. There's always like a hybrid thing. And I have seen situations where they started out with really expensive machines. Just let's not calculate until we're blue in the face. Just have expensive machines, throw everything up there, and then then try to make it cheaper after that. I know a guy in, I think, New Zealand or Australia. He has 16 of these G5 machines, really expensive, and every month a meeting with the boss. We've switched off 1 G5, we moved that thing, and that thing is lower, and we've consolidated that. This was your bill last month, this is your bill now. And the difference is more than what he's costing, so keep going, right? This is a cost thing that I see a lot. And if you have usage that really is good for Azure, for scaling up or switching off, that works really well. Final thing, this is my actual bill from last month. One of these spoiled MVPs, I get a lot of Azure from Microsoft. And what I always see is the I/O, the blob stuff, almost nothing. Premium storage always bites me. The P30 disks, 120 euros a month for a disk, and you need like 6 or 8 of them for a SQL Server inside a VM. Lots of money. That's what always bites me. And forget to switch a machine off, right? SQL Server Enterprise Edition, 8 cores for a test, and you forget about it. After the test, you leave it running for 2 weeks. There goes your cost, right? Be careful there. I'm going to steal 30 more seconds and I'm done. The companies that I see move the most successful and the most in the easiest way are companies that are already co-locating. They do not have a data center. They're co-locating. They have a monthly bill. They know what the cost is of their data center because they have rented racks somewhere with servers that they rented with support contracts. And the co-locators usually have these rules. I want 8 gigs of memory. Okay, fill in this form, wait 6 weeks. Right? In Azure, it's just click. Those guys move with the most success and the quickest. I'm already over time, so I think we're going to have like a beer. There's a closing session, so I'm going to stop now. There's a closing session. I hope this was useful, some tips and tricks here of what to do and what to watch out for. And I hope you had a great day as well. Thank you.